In our last video, we identified the 3 natural cycles that are colliding in our world right now and wreaking havoc in our lives. Cycles of climate change, cycles of economy, and cycles of human conflict. All of the cycles are converging right now so that we know why we are living in these times of extremes. Please make sure you go and watch that video first. In this episode, we'll explore one of the paradigm-shattering discoveries that, again, we are not seeing in the mainstream science and mainstream media, and it radically changes the way we see ourselves and our beliefs. So what can we do about these times of extreme? We can't change the cycles that we previously talked about. What can we change to make our lives better and create better families, stronger communities as we go through these changes? The answer to this timeless riddle lies in the ability and willingness to answer it honestly. There's a lot of good news that comes within these times of extremes, as we already have the solutions to some of the big problems in our world. Despite what the totalitarian oligarchs, through their corporation and technocracy, are trying to convince you by the manipulation of mainstream media, politics, healthcare, education, etc. Bombarding and brainwashing us with ideologies that simply work to fill their pockets, and at whose expense? Us, the human race. We have all the technological solutions and resources available to us right now to feed every mouth of every human being. Try to say that out loud. The lack of food is not the reason why millions go to bed hungry every night or without essential human care. It is the lack of priority that is yet to be made to get the food in the places where it is needed. We already have all of the technology that we need to create electricity and to bring it to every home of every family on this planet. We can do that affordably with 0 greenhouse gases, and we can do it in a way that is sustainable to this planet. We've already discovered how to build economies that are based in cooperation and sharing rather than competition and scarcity. Clean, sustainable and self-sufficient communities like Arcosanti in Arizona. That is designed to house over 5,000 people that grow all of their own food and produce their own energy. They have 100% employment rate because everyone that wants to work is working to grow the food and produce the power to sustain their community. We already have everything we need: the knowledge to reverse disease, to reverse aging, and to trigger the healing mechanisms within our human body. Every organ within our body is now documented under laboratory conditions with the ability to heal itself. Even the organs that we were previously told could not do so. Brain tissue, spinal cord tissue, heart tissue, pancreatic tissue, all of them. Now humans are documented with the ability to reverse disease and heal themselves. The key is that they must be given the right conditions. So when we hear all of these solutions already exist, there's probably a question that immediately comes to your mind. Where are they? Why don't we see all of these solutions implemented in the world right now? Well, the answer to that question opens a door to what is believed to be an even greater crisis. A silent crisis that very few people are talking about. It's the crisis of thinking. We've got to change the way we think before all of these solutions can make sense to our lives. We currently live under the imposed idea that we need and depend on a political system that tells us what to do, what to think, how to live our lives, controls our education, health, finances, and it's doing it more relentlessly and efficiently than ever before. So basically, a rat race program for you to fall into since the moment you were born until the day you expire. This is a mind-boggling, huge rabbit hole that you should definitely investigate on your own, as throughout this series, we want to focus only on the massive positive discoveries that are happening right now and how it will transform us all to a much more advanced species, instead of concentrating on all the nonsense and the doom and gloom of the current world. But basically, unless we all have a new way of thinking that allows for possibilities of surviving, but more importantly, thriving, any of these solutions would simply be under someone else's control, or they would never be implemented. It all comes down to the way we answer a single, very profound question. Every human who has ever walked the face of this earth and looked into the cosmos has asked themselves this question. It's the basis for every choice and decision that we've ever made in our lives. Please do not be deceived by the simplicity of this question. It is deceptively simple, but our true power lies within. Who are we? Who am I as an individual? Whatever the answer you give to it, it will form the lens or the perception through which you see yourself, other people, the world, relationships, career, healthcare choices, and would affect every financial decision. They are all constantly filtered through the perception of who we think we are. So whoever you think you are will determine all of your decisions, your actions and consequences, whether they have been positive or negative. What you think and your thoughts create your reality. And this is why honesty is so important when answering this question. Because are we truly answering who we are from the bottom of our hearts? Do we have available to us all of the information there is about ourselves, physically, mentally, spiritually? Or are we answering by repeating memorized lines from a controlled narrative that was infiltrated in your family and education and programmed as our core beliefs since the moment we were born? I can't think of a more important question for us to answer, because it is the foundation of our lives. We are all on a soul-searching journey, and the answer to who we are should come from self-realization, research, curiosity, challenging our own ideas in the pursuit of the higher truth. As humans, we started thinking in a scientific way only around 300 years ago. How short is that in comparison to the 300,000 years that we have been around as Homo sapiens? So clearly, unless we take in all the knowledge we can gather, we will not have the complete picture of who we truly are. It only makes sense that we start searching for answers with our own ancestors, in places where information has been least disturbed from the modern world and preserved intact. Places like monasteries on the Tibetan plateau, 16,000 feet above sea level, where very few people have had the chance to visit, with libraries of incredible knowledge. Only 5% of these libraries have been translated, so imagine the huge wisdom we can gather from places like this. The wisdom originated before paper was even invented. We find this knowledge on the cuneiform texts of our past, on the Sanskrit, the Tibetan stone texts, and it is this wisdom that is at the core of the major religions of the world. The Hebraic, Tibetan, Hindu, pre-Christian and Christian traditions, the Old and the New Testament. It's in places isolated and remote like this one that we have had the opportunity to be with the people that live and breathe the secrets that are in these libraries. The monks, the nuns, the abbots of these places and in other parts of the world. Like the shamans of Bolivia, Peru and Mexico, Native American Indians, Australian Aboriginals, African tribes, Inuits in Arctic regions, gurus from India and masters from China. Our ancestors had a knowledge that has been long forgotten and in most cases prevented from reaching the public. Perfect examples of that is the burning of the Library of Alexandria in Egypt, where thousands of books were lost in the flames, or the removal of dozens of extremely important books from the Bible by Roman Emperor Constantine in the Council of Nicaea, or the latest crazy ideas like allowing artificial intelligence to rewrite the Bible for a unified world religion. For 5,000 years, our indigenous ancestors have asked themselves the same question: who am I? And they answered the question for themselves in a way and with a language that made sense to them. It wasn't science, but it made sense to the times and to the people in their world. They explained what they saw in the heavens. They recorded what happened with the stars and the planets, what happened with their mind, spirit and bodies when going into profound meditative states, and the incredible powers they could access. This is so fascinating to know right now, because in many incidences, the new discoveries of modern science, like quantum mechanics, actually parallel the wisdom of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions, and what our ancestors have come to understand and master. We live in a very young modern world of science. Science began in the 1700s when Isaac Newton formulated the laws of physics and when he formalised them into his textbooks. So for 300 years, science has been trying to answer the same questions that our indigenous ancestors have tried to answer for 5,000 years. When we ask the question, who are we? Science can't answer these questions directly. First, they must ask what are called the perennial questions of science. The first and most fundamental one is, what is the origin of life? Where does life come from? This is the foundation to start knowing who we truly are. The second question is, where does human life come from? What about if human life does not come from where all other life comes from? It's a fascinating question and one we will explore throughout this series. The third question is all about relationships. What is our relationship to our bodies? When things happen to us like illness and disease, are we separate from our bodies and powerless to do anything? Or are we somehow empowered to participate and influence what happens at the cellular level, genetic level, or even deeper at the energetic level? The next question is, what is our relationship to the world beyond our bodies? And the question is very similar. Are we connected or are we separate? Are we empowered to participate and influence the world around us? From our workplace and family to entire nations or even the whole planet? Or everything that is happening around us is out of our control and we sit and watch things happen feeling helpless and powerless to do anything? The next question is, what is our relationship to the past? Is the past linear, as we have been led to believe and been taught in schools for the last 300 years? Did civilization begin 5,000 years ago and progress in a linear fashion to the pinnacle of sophistication that we think we have today? Are we the only ones that have developed the technology that we have today? Or have there been others? Is civilization cyclical as well? The next question, and perhaps the most fundamental beyond the origin of life, is, what is the true rule of nature? We're all part of nature, and it is the foundation for our carbon structure lives. Is it a rule based on struggle and conflict, survival of the fittest, as Charles Darwin told us to believe? Or is there something else happening and nature is actually based in cooperation? These are the 6 fundamental perennial questions we need to answer to know who we truly are. If you were raised and educated in the West in the last 150 years, You, as well as I, have been indoctrinated with a scientific story that has been manipulated to construct a false reality. The story that says the following. It says that the origin of life is completely random. It says the origin of human life is also completely random. A long string of random chemical events happening over a long period of time that by sheer coincidence led to a single living complex system like ourselves. Our relationship to our bodies, we're told that we are separate from our bodies and pretty much powerless to do anything when it comes to the condition of healing our bodies. And that's why we are told that we need a third party to heal. But don't you worry, Big Pharma is coming with all good intentions to save the day and rescue you while making you fully dependent on their chemical industries and businesses for your daily survival. The relationship to the world around us, pretty much the same answer. We've been led to believe that we are separate from our world and pretty much powerless when it comes to influencing peace and cooperation, whether it's within our families and our communities or between nations. Just you sit down on your sofa, eat rubbish food and watch your preferred form of circus on your beautiful 50-inch television set. Our relationship to our past. We have been taught that civilization is linear and happened only once. No other intelligent form of life walked the earth before us. It began 5,000 years ago, and we are at the pinnacle of sophistication. Hunter-gatherers who, without any previous experience or knowledge, decided to wake up one day, start agriculture all around the world, and at the same time, by the way, and started to build structures that we can't even begin to comprehend why, and we can't even copy that today. And we have been taught that the fundamental rule of nature is actually based upon competition, conflict and struggle. That nature only favours those who are the strongest of the pack or capable of dominating another species. These are the principles of the world that we see today and what we are taught in schools and universities. New discoveries have now overturned every single one of these beliefs. Is now proven by peer-reviewed science to be scientifically false. So this isn't my personal opinion or Greg Braden's opinion. It's not a theory. It's not a hypothesis. This is based on peer-reviewed science. This means that it has been studied and accepted by a huge majority of scientists in the same field. What we now know is that these false assumptions of science are at the root, the foundation of many of the extremes that we are seeing in our lives and in the world today. As we talked about in our previous video, new discoveries are now telling us where we need to shift our thinking. But why is this so important right now? Well, many of these scientific discoveries, the false assumptions, were being made in the late 1800s and the early 1900s, precisely the time when our society was being developed. So the fundamental essence of our society, our economic system, our corporate system, the way we deal with natural resources like food and water, energy and medicine, all of these things are based in the ideas that were embraced as scientific over 120 years ago. And even though we now know that many of them are false, we're still living in a system where those principles are in place. They are unsustainable because they are based on false assumptions. The best science of the 21st century, it's telling us, number one, the origin of life, it's not random. Physical evidence is telling us this. The origin of human life is definitely not random. The DNA evidence is telling us this. Our relationship to our body, science is telling us that we are deeply, deeply connected. Our thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs trigger the chemistry in our brains and in our hearts that are releasing these healing hormones, the anti-aging hormones, the powerful immune response within our bodies. Our relationship to the world around us is also connected. Everything in the universe is energy, including us, and we can alter its frequency through our own inner biological technology and, believe it or not, alter matter itself. The relationship to our past, what we now know as a civilization, is cyclical. The 5,000 years that we have been studying as the history of the world, that's only the history of the most recent cycle. There were many 5,000-year cycles before that. The fundamental rule of nature, we now know that nature is based upon a principle of cooperation and not conflict, in what biologists call mutual aid, not struggle. This isn't denying that struggle and conflict happen, we all see it. But here's the deal. The more struggle and conflict we see, that tells us how far we have strayed as individuals or as nations from the truest nature, the most fundamental principle of the natural world. So now, 150 years of this scientific thinking is changing because these new discoveries tell us something must change. So we're moving on to a new story. We're moving from a story of separation to a story of connection. We're moving from a story of competition and conflict based on Darwin's ideas from 150 years ago to a new school based on appreciation, cooperation and mutual aid. The world is changing and we're trying to solve the problems of our past with the same ways that we have always done in the past, and it's clearly not working. It's not working because we are now a globalized society. That globalization has pushed our beliefs and what we think is true about ourselves and one another. It's pushed it to the very edge of what we now understand to be true. And the only things that are breaking down around us are the unsustainable ways of thinking, the unsustainable solutions of separation, of conflict and competition. So when you find yourself challenged in your world, when you find yourself asked to support other people in positions of power who are being asked to make decisions on your behalf, then you can ask yourself the question, are they using the old methods and ideas? Or are they using the latest scientific methods and ideas to solve the world's problems? The process of evolution is to understand what is no longer needed for survival and to embrace true change from within for a better adaptation to the world around us, so solutions can flow into our lives if we apply natural principles based on harmony of what is real and true in our world. In our next video, we're going to talk about specific discoveries that will turn upside down those 150 years of scientific thinking. So be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you stay up to date when new videos are uploaded. Take care and we'll see you in the next video.